that we should, as Christians, attempt to enlighten others in order that they become aware of these tactics. Now, these tactics that I'm going to discuss in this video are such that we have an enemy that likes to remain hidden. We also have an enemy that likes to use mankind but limit the onslaught of retaliation or retribution that the entity they're manifesting in suffers as a result of their tactics. In other words, a demon manifests in a person and starts going blah, 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 and operating them like a puppeteer. And while that's happening, they want to reduce the negative sort of media or attention that comes upon the person they're using. So they like to use men but remain hidden and lessen the negativity that comes against the men they're using, or the ramifications, or the implications. So in other words, men go away to serve the devil, and the devil and his demons use them. They use their physical bodies, they use their voice, they use their station, their job, their brief, their office against mankind, and particularly against Christians. And how they come against Christians is allowing harm to accrue and fail to provide the proper, for example, medical care and financial assistance and provision, societal provision, that they otherwise apply and make readily available to their servants and children of their servants. So how does the devil achieve this? He remains deliberately vague and misleading. Two of the main tactics of hell are vagueness and omission. Omission is when you deliberately leave something out of what you've said to encourage or maintain a degree of ignorance in the listener. Of course, as human beings, we're born into the world. We require guidance, edification, and teaching. We learn a lot by what we see as well, and the devil's aware of this. He knows that he can educate public opinion simply by way of the public observing other people in society. So the devil enters his demons into man through these witchcraft covens, so that man can behave in a way that influences children to behave in that way also. But it can be implemented subtly in a kind of a hidden and wicked, evil sort of a vague way. Now, it's called subliminal warfare. It's because it's not obvious immediately to the conscious mind, but on some kind of sub-level, like below the surface of the water, under the radar, all of those, below the surface, there is a communication, a degree of communication that all human beings innately have, but can't always articulate, and is not always available to the conscious mind. And that's where the devil operates. Him and his evil spirits, they operate on the subconscious level. Okay. Now, what does being deliberately vague and misleading gain the devil? It gives him the ability to neglect. Neglect is one of the devil's main tactics, because deliberate neglect that people blame on a crisis gives them the ability to appear as though they're the ones who are trying to help you out of the crisis, while they're the ones orchestrating it. And you don't blame them directly. You don't say, well, that has to be them. And if you do, they'll just blame circumstances, because you can't connect them to the circumstances. So if you can't connect them to the set of circumstances which led to the crisis, then they can act with a level and a degree of impunity, which means that people can't rightly or surely or obviously attribute the crisis to them by way of substantiated, irrefutable, solid evidence. So they can claim ineptness. Well, we all need to learn something. So they play on their human flaws as an excuse for failing to do what they should be doing and know how to do. Okay? So because they try to deliberately avoid doing what they should do, obviously in a timely fashion, they know that by failing to do what they should be doing, note very importantly, in a timely fashion, harm can accrue, it can accumulate, it can build up. When it was totally avoidable. Now they could have avoided the harm, but they let it happen. And then at the very last minute they come along and go, do, here I am to save the day. But it's too late, and they knew that. They knew they were arriving too late. They did it on purpose, so that harm could accrue in their absence. And then they could claim, you need us. See, demons are always trying to use men to claim that humans need demons. Pervasively. But it's the demons preventing the men from doing their job properly that leads to the harm. Demons are not needed in the world. They only design things that are harmful. They're absolute morons. They're tactically inept. They're strategically flawed. And ultimately, they're worthless pigs. So any involvement they have in mankind is only going to harm mankind. So what they do is they employ man to fail to do what he should be doing, so that they can claim, see, you needed us. Mankind needed you to conquer mankind, so that mankind would fail to do what mankind should be doing to avoid the harm that then came upon mankind. And we need you? No, we don't need the demons or the devil. They don't provide so much as a bowl of cornflakes. It's mankind doing the work. Demons don't even have bodies outside of the possession of human beings. They don't have their own bodies. So it's only when a human goes away to serve Satan or has been conquered by a demon that a demon enters in to use a human to speak through. And that's happening, guys. Every time you turn on the telly, that's what's happening. Witches and wizards. And demons enter in, and it's when God gives you spiritual discernment, you can tell when a demon is operating a human being, because they don't behave like human beings. They don't behave as image bearers of God. They have a different way about them. They're other. They're not normal. So demons are accusers like their father, the devil. That's a constant sort of a blah, 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 blah. Demons are like goats. Do you know the goat that goes blah, 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 blah? Do you ever see a goat do that? They do that. They stick their tongue out and they go blah, 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 blah. That's pretty much what a demon does all day long. That's why they're called goat demons, amongst other reasons. The Bible calls them goat demons, foul spirits, goat demons. That's what the Lord calls them. They are goat demons. They behave as goats. The only thing that will keep a goat away is a fence. You go in, he'll try and fight with you. You're standing there, he just take it into his head to butt you. What? That's what demons are like. They don't know what they're doing. They're chaotic. They're bouncing off anything in their way. They're nonsense. They don't know how to behave properly. Now put enablement on top of that. It's a calamity. So the vagueness is the opportunity. It's a form of lying because it's not forthcoming truth. And something that's not forthcoming truth is a lie. if it misleads. You can deceive somebody by omission. Have you ever heard that? Deception by omission. To leave something out that you should have said to fully inform a person is lying to them. And that's where the devil works. Why? Because it's very hard to actually attribute blame in that case. You see? That's why they try to operate in that space. You calling me a liar? Can you prove it? No, but I can tell you that I was misled. I can tell you that I believe I was lied to by omission. Because I see deception as a lie. And deception by omission is the worst kind of lie. Because it's aggressively non-committal. It's certainly denying you of the full story. Why? To your harm. That's why it's evil. When something deliberately denies you the full story to your harm, it was an evil lie from the pit of hell. If something's denied you for your good, that's different. That's a different story. But when something is deliberately not told to you, even though it was necessary for you to know it, or if something is deliberately not given to you, even though it was your right to receive it, then somebody has deliberately attempted to harm you. You see, when people go into government, they will blame circumstances or other people. And when everybody's blaming circumstances or somebody else, the idea is that they create so much confusion that they can still just fail to provide in a timely fashion anyway. Because by the time somebody's gone in, investigated and sifted through all their nonsense, the harm is already done by way of failure to make the provision in a timely fashion. And then they come along with these harebrained schemes that are supposed to be a sort of an attempt to solve the problem, but actually, when you take all the factors into account, it's making it worse. They are a calamity. So you know that somebody's serving the devil when they're being deliberately vague and misleading. That's how the devil works. The devil is in the detail. Subtlety is his sword. A sword of subtlety. They're a deadly host. They're lethal. But they cannot defeat us because we have the counsel of Yeshua. And we're not ignorant of their devices. They think, they're terribly smart and skilled. But when we have the counsel of Yeshua, they can't deceive us. I mean, they can try. They have more enablement and experience of the world. They've been around for thousands of years. And they try to use this against us and make us look silly and feel silly and just little man, simple man, dad. You're some man. And this is just to patronize, condescend, to get a reaction. Why? Why, have you a problem with being condescended? Have you a problem with being patronized, have you? Yeah, I know the feeling. Because the devil is arguing against God and how he treated him as being comparable to the treatment you're receiving in the world. So their angle is, well, we had to show you the full story, so you had to suffer what Satan suffered so that you could understand why Satan did what he did. They're trying to conquer you by principled argument and high-reaching argument. Then they say, we had to do it, we had to show you what it was like, and they play the role then. And they have a different costume for every role. And it's all deception, it's all death, and it's all to lead you away from God and be conquered by evil principles of hell. And they'll come at you from any angle, anywhere they think they have traction. And remember, that's what it's all about. It's all about the battlefield being in the heart and in the mind. And that's where they fight. They fight in the mind. And so they want you to feel that you shouldn't be lesser. That to be lesser in faculty or in ability is in some way makes you of lesser value. So that you'll argue against that as a principle. You'll argue against that as something forced upon you by God. They want you to see your human nature as a limitation instead of a gift. They want you to feel as though without this world you'd be nothing. They want you to fear the unknown. They want you to fear what's ahead in the kingdom of heaven if God delivers you from hell. They want you to be unsure of that. They come out with statements like, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Why would anybody compare Yeshua to the devil? The devil is a slanderer. The name devil means slanderer. It means false accuser. To slander somebody is to make statements that are false about them. So the devil is a liar about people. Why? Because he wants to manipulate people against people. He's a divider. He's a divider to conquer. He uses divide and conquer strategies. He's basically a thug, a problem creator. He's basically a thug. That's what a dragon is. A thief and a destroyer, full of wrath, with a belly full of wrath and an insatiable hunger to devour and kill. He came to kill, steal and destroy. So demons will serve him, and so will men who want to fatten their bellies in a day of slaughter. Have you ever heard of the term go in for the kill? Often these terms have more than one meaning. What they're referring to is going in means going deeper into suffering. It means going deeper into the burning fire so that you can kill souls along with the devil, so that you would literally burn hotter in hell for the thrill of killing souls. Sifting. That's twisted. But that's what they do. That's what they mean by going in for the kill. That's what they mean by go big or go home. In their mind, going big is going with a degree of demonic enablement. Going big means increasing your eternal harm, and going home, if you don't go home big, is a threat of death unless you serve the devil as he sees fit. Listen again. Go big or go home. Where's home to one who serves the devil? Outer darkness. Hell. Do you see the point now? Go big or go home. So what they're saying is go big. Become a demon-possessed, demon-enabled, demon-endowed king of the earth who kills on behalf of Satan, who hunts mankind on behalf of Satan for the thrill of the kill. You're going to hell anyway if you don't agree with Lord Jesus. If you don't have faith in him, if you don't love him, you're going to hell anyway, so you might as well go to hell big. You might as well have a stream of kills behind you. Do you get it now? So the kings of the earth are servants of the devil. They're servants of demons. They worship Satan and his demons. And they're kings of the earth. This is the age of men that we're living in. The age of kings. The age of empires. But the kings aren't what you think. They don't all have gold crowns on their head. They're in all walks of life, hunting souls. It's not what you think it is. They say things like the best things in life are free. They're talking about a culture of sex. So it's like a sex cult. So when they say, I just wanted one big one, I just wanted the full tour, they'll say, I had both. What they mean is they had both God and Satan. Because of grace, these men bring huge harm upon themselves because they exploit grace so they can be hunters of the devil. Do you see how it works? So Freemasons are these men. Eastern Star are these women, the kings and queens of the earth. These are hunters on account of Satan. And they're brought up by the fallen spirits. They bring them up. They give them a degree of enablement. They call it opening them. So if you can imagine that your body is a file. Do you know how they unzip a file on a computer? Well, imagine that could happen with your flesh. And a demon, an enabled spirit, which have been described as infinite mathematical complexes, cosmic powers, they are able to manipulate your flesh because they've become cosmic powers as a result of being disembodied. They're no longer sort of funneled into the physical form, limited by the conscious mind and brain. They now operate outside of that and have actualized, so to speak, a realization of the entirety of what it is to be a spirit entity, at least within the cosmic reality, the universe that surrounds them, which isn't as they teach it. It's different to how they tell you it is through academies and institutions. So the reality that we live in is quite different to how they present it. Quite different. But they try to explain the reality we live in with convoluted explanations that aren't actually representative of the physical reality, but might actually work out on a piece of paper if you're a good mathematician and could work out the equation. You see what I mean? So mathematically it works out, but it's not the actual physical representation of the universe we live in. But it's a bit of a digression, but not wholly. But the point I'm making is, whilst they're cosmic powers, they don't tell you the true nature of the cosmic reality, though they know it and travel it, because they're kind of outside the time-space continuum and interacting with it. So that's why they work on probabilities, so that they can navigate the future as much as they possibly can by projecting. So they're using complex mathematical equations to arrive at probabilities so that they can strategize based upon the findings of their mathematical implementations. So they'll implement a certain mathematical formula to say, well, and all of the sort of the tendencies of a person, their proclivities and propensities, their physical condition, all of that is kind of put into a supercomputer that churns it all around and says, well, this is what's probably going to happen as a result of all the information you've input. But they kind of are that computer. They are that processing capability collectively. And they've become a sort of a web, an interweb, an internet that surrounds the world. The Bible calls them, Jesus calls them, the cosmic powers over this present darkness. So the demonic is probably far more powerful than most people realize. It is a sort of a universe within a universe. It's a dark network of spiritual entities with far more understanding than human beings, far more enablement and capacity. But it doesn't help them. It only gives them the ability to destroy themselves and anybody else who would go to death. And that's another bit of a story. But for the purposes of this video, I want to keep it on point. So demons have the ability to manifest something and communicate it adequately almost immediately. So that's what you're up against. They're making calculations at a rate that a human being can't comprehend. We don't have that functional capacity in this current form. We don't have that faculty. But they do. And they implement it to harmful effect. And I can tell you, because when you're a man of God, when you're a preacher and you're out on the street and you're exposing corruption and you're exposing them, they come against you with more vehemence because they want to shut you up. They'll say it out in the open. I've seen demons manifest in somebody passing by me on the street, and they'll say something like, "Shut him up." So demons are taking over the body of somebody who walked by me on the street. But what's interesting about that is they're not hiding the fact that they're saying, "Shut him up." Why? Because the battle between me and them is in my mind. Are you getting the point now? If I don't hear it, does it exist in my mind? You see the power of speech? The power of speech manifests something in the time-space continuum. It's very powerful. It's called spell casting. Or they call it speaking into something. It has more power than you might actually realize. This is why as human beings, as servants of God, we must tear down the strongholds of the devil. We tear down every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, by restating the word of God, which is a higher authority and eternal power, unchangeable by anything a demon will ever say. So lies are spoken. They kind of come out like spirals. Every time you speak, you create a vibration, a sound, a wave. It's a wave, a vibration. It vibrates through the air and it interacts with your eardrum, and sort of little spikes or receptors inside of the ear, and it's interpreted by the brain. The vibration is interpreted, broken down, and presented to the brain. So it's kind of like an interface. Sort of like a MIDI interface, you know, when you plug in the instrument and it's converted from analog into digital information, and then it's given its representation or its symbol, which will give it an image on the screen or a sound through the speaker. Well, your brain is doing that with your ears. So every time something is spoken, your brain interprets it, and then your brain presents it to your mind, which is spiritual. So your brain is sort of the interface between this reality and your mind. And if a demon can speak to your mind without speaking to your ear, because they're spiritual cosmic powers, they can present something to your mind even in the absence of it being heard. But of course it makes it more powerful if they're presenting it to your mind and your ear at the same time. It's more compound. And that's what the devil meant when he said, "I will come at them from all angles." The devil intends to come against us from every angle that he has, every point of access available to him as a spirit entity. That includes speech. And they get so bold around us, especially in towns where they've conquered most of the inhabitants, to the point where it becomes like a ghost town. Much like Sodom and Gomorrah. When God was being asked, "If there are 10 people in this place, will you spare the city?" 10 people in this place that would believe on the Lord Jesus. 10 righteous men. Will you spare the whole city? And God was saying yes. He was saying, yes, I will spare it. So God would spare a city if there were one. If there was one, rather. He leaves the 99 to go after the one. But once he got Lot and his family out, he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. He destroyed it to ashes. He rained fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah. It was turned to ash, exactly as he said. He's serious about destroying those who would destroy him, who would tear the very eyes out of his head. Who would stab him in the back. Their own creator. The folly of it. Imagine attacking the God of eternity. How would you expect to beat or defeat the God of eternity? He's the God of eternity. That means he's eternally reigning. You can't be the God of eternity and lose your throne. That wouldn't make sense. So, obviously, demons have more capabilities than humans, and they're arrogant in that. And that's supposed to be a worm in your mind. Why? Because we know as human beings, as servants of God, that only goodness and complete perfection comes from Jesus. A demon, we know, has more enablements than us, more faculty, more ability, being that they're spirit entities. But that's hideous to us. It's hideous to us that such a worthless person as a demon, who only intends to do harm, and every sort of ugly, perverse and converse and, sort of distorted activity, chaotic, disordered and harmful, would have such enablement. It's obviously hideous to our mind that they would have that level or degree of enablement. And they play on that. So obviously a demon knows what's hideous to a Christian and delights in manifesting that to a Christian. Why? The devil calls it starving them. Starve him. Starve him of what? Actual food? No. Light. Starve him of light. What does that mean? He's commanding the demons to manifest in the people around him. Why? Because the Christian who has spiritual discernment can identify when a demon is in a human. And what are they talking about starving? They're saying present demonic behavior all around that person throughout all of the day, as much as you possibly can. Manifest as many lies, as many evil and demonic, antagonistic and vexations, provocations and evocations, every evil witchcraft you possibly can, manifested in his environment to keep the light from operating through and in him, because we don't want the Holy Spirit increasing in the place where he is. Even as I'm speaking to you now, his Spirit is there, trying to antagonize me. They hate when they're being exposed so clearly. They hate it. They don't want people to know about their tactics. They want to remain hidden. The devil hates being exposed. Why? Because our power is to expose them. Why? Because to expose something and tell the truth about it is to tear it down. I can feel it going away now. It's abating. That's why they increased it there, because it's like, so it's like a vicious lion, an old lion who knows this might be his last battle. He's going to put every ounce of fight he has left in him into that battle, because he knows if he doesn't win it, he's dead. Even if he gets away from that fight with a wound, he won't have any pride, any lionesses behind him to help him hunt. He won't be able to kill on his own. He's old and now he's wounded. He's a dead lion. So he's going to put every bit of viciousness that's left in his frame into that fight. That's why an old lion is deadly. You know the way I say it's not about the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. There's a degree of truth to that. So demons, when they know they're about to lose some footing, they come at you more vehemently. They come at you with more fight. And they use as much power as they're let. What do I mean let? God said, I will not let you be tested beyond what you can endure. Demons don't have any power over God. If God is here with me and he sends his angel to remove the demon who's coming against me, that demon can't resist an angel of God. They have to go instantly, immediately. With immediate effect, the demon leaves as soon as a servant of light arrives, because God is above all. And when he orders something done, it's done. So when a demon's about to lose footing, so it makes sense when the devil's about to lose footing, he'll tell them to starve somebody, starve them of light. What does he mean by that? Starve them of human interaction that can be viewed as loving. Don't allow them anybody to interface or interact with. Don't allow them to edify anybody. Don't allow them to love anybody. Which leads me on to the next part of this video. Today, don't need to mention any names, a young lady called me from quite a bit back, actually. I was just walking, I think I might have been going to buy some dates today. And I go there quite frequently. I buy them fresh, they're beautiful. And I go to get them. And I was walking and I heard a voice. It was quite gentle, it wasn't a shout. So I was like, maybe that's something I don't need to turn back for. But then it felt like the voice wasn't increasing in volume, but it was getting closer to me. So I looked back, and it was a young lady. And she said, "Stephen." I said, "Yes." A lot of people would know my name from around. Well, even before I became a preacher, because I was a musician, maybe they'd know me from venues or videos online or whatever. But certainly a lot of people would know my name or know me from preaching around the area. I'm just a preacher. But they know your name when you're preaching in a place for a period of time. So this young lady came up. She's often asked me questions when I'm out preaching or whatever. She came over and she asked me a question. And the question was about the Christian view, about how God views gays or lesbians. And it's not that I'm apprehensive or trepidatious about answering these questions, but oftentimes these questions are leading. They're trying to create some controversy. Now, I didn't feel that was the case with this young lady today. For some reason, I didn't feel like she was trying to cause a problem. But quite nearby, a man stopped and turned and he said, "Don't listen to him." I kind of thought, that's very unusual. Firstly, what business is it of that man that I'm talking to this young lady? Are people not allowed to talk anymore? And why would that man, having not heard our conversation, be telling that young lady what she should and should not listen to? Now, when I say young lady, she's a young woman. She wouldn't be a girl. She's a young woman. So I kind of thought, like, how does that man think he can tell this woman not to listen to somebody she's asked a question of? They're not allowed to do that. Human beings have freedom of conscience. You absolutely cannot be telling other adults, other young women, who they can and cannot listen to. This, you see, there's a reason for this. We have a right as Christians to a good name. And when a man turns around about face and speaks quite loudly, "Don't listen to him," everybody around in that area is asked to think that there's something wrong with what I'm saying, or that for some reason people shouldn't want to listen to me. This is character defamation. This goes against my right to a good name. You're not allowed to do that. He's not allowed to tell people who should be listening to me and who shouldn't be listening to me. He's not allowed to give other people in the area the belief that I shouldn't be listened to. They're entitled to have their own conscience, beliefs and opinions. And it's not good enough to say don't listen to that person without giving a good enough reason. Just like a court judge can't do it, a man on the street can't do it. So if the court judge says you can't speak or record, and I ask him why, or I ask him, do I have a reasonable excuse not to comply with that statement and order, and he refuses to tell me, he is also committing offences against my right to a good name. So whether it's a man on the street doing it or a judge doing it, neither of them are allowed to do it without solid irrefutable evidence and substantiated evidence. Doesn't matter if it's a judge, a politician, a king, or a commoner. They're not allowed to tell you or other people that they shouldn't listen to you. Absolutely not. So if a young woman comes up and asks me a question, doesn't matter what it's about, if it's about abortion, if it's about same-sex relationships, if it's about homosexuality or lesbianism or unnatural relations of any kind, as the Bible terms them, they're entitled to ask me, and I will always answer them according to the scriptures, and no man can tell them not to listen to me. That's very serious. That's really not acceptable. That's unlawful conduct. Because you are unavoidably presenting to the minds of the people around that for some reason I shouldn't be listened to. And that is, without solid evidence, character defamation. You can't toy with these matters and comply with the laws. So I welcome you. If you have a question about homosexuality, same-sex relationships, abortion, different worldviews, different faith systems, whether it's Islam or Hinduism or Mormonism or Jehovah's Witness ism, you can come to me and you can ask me of what the Christian worldview is. I'm a preacher of the Christian Bible for many years now. There are very few people with as much experience of street preaching as I have. There are some with more, but very few with as much. There are even fewer with more experience. But very few have as many hours preaching as I do. So, who's better qualified? The judge to answer questions or converse with youths on matters of Christianity? Who's better qualified? I thought the world view was you earn respect. I thought the world view was that when somebody works and puts in the graft, they become the go-to person. Why is that the case in every other walk of life bar preaching? Would there be somebody better to go to who has less experience? So there's obviously a serious problem when a very experienced street preacher is asked a question by a young woman and a man makes it his business to say to the woman, don't listen to him. This is against the law. That's not acceptable behaviour in our society. Now, of course, people can do it antagonistically, especially after you say you can't do it. They don't listen to him and walk off, you know. But it's very serious because it is character defaming. And you have a right to a good name in society. Because somebody turned around saying, don't listen to him, it's like saying he has nothing good to say, what his speech is not trustworthy. And that can be perceived as other people around as, this man's not trustworthy. How can I give him a job if he's not to be listened to? And why would I give him a job if the locals are saying don't listen to him? Would that harm my business? So this is very serious stuff, because they might actually be harming my reputation, which can give me difficulty finding a job, give me difficulty in all walks and endeavours that I try in order to keep body and soul together. So it's very harmful speech. It's hate speech. Because hate, the word hate and evil mean harm. To not care about. To not care about your fellow man is to have evil intention towards him, and that's to want to harm him. Now, more importantly, the woman came over and asked me the question, and she should feel confident to. And she did, obviously. She felt confident to. She came over. She asked me the question. What does God think about? Does God hate, lesbians? Does God hate lesbianism? This was the nature of the question. And I said, have you read the Bible? I put it back on her. Have you read the Holy Bible? Yes. Actually, I said the Bible first, and interestingly she said, the Holy Bible? I said, yes, the Holy Bible. And she said, yes, I've read it. Well, I said, what do you think based on what you've read? Do you think that homosexuality is a sin in the eyes of God? Was the question I was asking. And she pointed to her girlfriend. She said, I'm a lesbian, this is my girlfriend. And my interaction with her girlfriend was to say blessings. Hi, blessings. I was loving towards them. But I was also asking them to search it out for themselves. Do you see what happened there? They might have been asking for my view. I was asking them to employ their own mind on the text of the scriptures. Because you try to make me enemy number one, I'm going to ask you to use your own brain. What do you gather from the Bible? Now I can answer you, but would it not be best for you to read the Bible yourself? I can answer this question for you. I can give you numerous scriptures from both the Old Testament and the New Testament that will tell you very clearly that God sees homosexuality, if you want to call it a New World term, or to use the old terminology, unnatural relations, as a sin. God views them as a sin. People will often say, well, homosexuality is a relatively new word. And this is true. That's a statement of fact. It is a relatively new word. It's just a new word that describes the act of same-sex relationships. Okay. It originally derives, I think, from homo, same-sex, homosexual, same-sex. Homo can also mean man, but I think in this application it means same. I think it's Latin and Greek. There's a different meaning in both. So it's same-sex relationships. So homosexuality, an interest in sexual relations with the same gender. So unnatural relations refers to that. But it also refers to any relation, interaction, physical interaction, that is not a natural use of anatomy. So obviously two women together have limited ways of interacting with each other physically that aren't the same as the way a man and a woman can interact with each other physically. And so this is what's meant by unnatural relations. Now, what was very clear was that this woman was very comfortable, very calm and relaxed, and what was approaching me. She approached me. She covered ground behind me to catch up with me, to ask me the question, do you think I was being aggressive? Do you think that I was trying to shove things down people's necks? Do you think that I was being overtly bold and forceful? They chased me down. They covered ground to ask me the question, do you think they were intimidated by me? Do you? They weren't intimidated by me. Do you think that I'm physically intimidating? Physically imposing? Do you think that people are afraid of me? Do you think that my words are harmful to them because I repeat the scriptures of the Bible? Do you think that people chase me down the road to be harmed by me? She knew my name. It wasn't the first time she's heard me. Is that the behavior of somebody who's afraid to approach me? For somebody who is so sensitive that my words might hurt them, that they would actually cover ground to ask me. I have said numerous times that God loves homosexuals. I have said numerous times that I love homosexuals. But what I have also said numerous times is that God sees homosexuality as sin, and he hates sin. Now, I've had conversations, loving conversations with people who've said they don't agree. And as much as that hurts me, I accept that. I don't try to force Christianity down anybody's neck. I never have. But I've always been available to answer their questions truthfully, and I haven't been intimidated by the police or by anybody who would complain against me for so doing. And I'm still not intimidated by them. I don't fear anything that they would do or say about me. But I would point out that it's not lawful to tell adults not to listen to other adults. Or even children to say, don't listen to that man. Who are they to do that? That's character defamation. Because of the implications of that are unavoidably interpreted by way of somebody saying, don't listen to that man. Who are they to tell people who they can and can't listen to? The woman actually said to me, don't mind him. Don't worry. She said, this is my girlfriend. I said, blessings. Hi, blessings. 2 young ladies. Jesus told us, treat them as pure. Treat them with purity. Behave toward them with purity. And all I was asking them to do was, firstly, if they had read the Bible, and secondly, if they had, what did they think the Bible was saying on these subjects? Because it asks them to employ their minds. They're hardly saying that I'm the only Christian that believes same-sex relationships are a sin, are they? The Anglican Church recently rejected a pastor who was inviting same-sex relationships into the church. And I don't even agree with the Anglican Church doctrinally. But even they are rejecting pastors who would accept same-sex relationships in the church or bless them. It is a pervasive Christian belief, pervasive meaning most Christians believe, that same-sex relationships are condemned by God. But nowhere in the Bible does it say hate homosexuals. Nowhere in the Bible does it say reject them. Nowhere in the Bible does it say don't talk to them and don't listen to them and don't. Jesus said love your neighbour. So I said to that lady, my parting statement to that lady was, it doesn't mean God doesn't love you. It doesn't mean God doesn't love you because he hates the sin you're doing. But at the same time, because God loves you, doesn't mean that God will accept your sin. He won't. The question, the most common question she was asking, or the question she repeated was, just let me remember now. Oh, doesn't God accept me the way I am? You see, this question is quite vague. Doesn't God accept you the way you are? Yes. He accepts you the way you are, but he asks us not to sin. I'm not going to be telling people there's a barrier between them and God. There isn't. Because Jesus paid for sin at the cross. There's no barrier between them and God. Yes, God accepts you the way you are, but he also asks you not to sin. So if you're acknowledging that the Bible teaches that same-sex relationships are a sin, God won't accept your sin. And if you continue sinning, he won't accept you. That's the point. The point is, if you're in a same-sex relationship and you're staying in that and calling yourself Christian, you're misled. You're deceived. Yes, God loves you, but he hates sin. Why does he hate sin? Because he hates harm. And sin is always harmful. Always. It might not be obvious to you now as to how it's being harmful, but I assure you it is. And maybe you just don't know how it's harming you yet. But if God calls it a sin, it's harming you and other people. So I love you. Are you homosexual? I love you. I've had a same-sex encounter before in my life. Maybe on more than one occasion, but with one person. And I can tell you, I did love that person. I did love that person. But I wasn't loving towards them by engaging in sexual behavior towards them. It's true. And we grow up in a world that encourages exploration in sexual areas. And of course, when you're a young teen and you're charged with, hormones and the desire to have that tender physical embrace, and this never leaves us as human beings. It dwindles and we can survive without it, some more than others. But as a teen, you're charged. Everything in your makeup is now becoming aware of the beauty of the opposite sex. Or in some cases, people are drawn to the same sex like I was, oftentimes because there's less of a barrier there. Because I, as a young man, was very shy when it came to women. Very, very shy. I didn't know what to be doing around them. But I tried to play cool, But I didn't know. I was a nervous wreck around women. They were just so beautiful and so intimidating to me. So I was probably more comfortable becoming physical with a young man for that reason, because I didn't have the same trepidation in getting close. So that was probably path of least resistance for a hormone-charged teenager. And as an adult now, I have that hindsight and that perspective that I probably wouldn't have fully understood then. You see? So oftentimes we engage in these things because sometimes, engaging in the same-sex relationship, if you're doing it publicly, gives you a bit of attention that you mightn't have got as a child. Or nowadays, it's giving you that bit of, it's allowing you to join the group that you otherwise wouldn't be able to join because you wouldn't be in the same class, the same ilk, the same group, same peer group. Now you get to hang around with the cool people with a bit of money, with a bit of dosh, a bit of prestige. Oh, that's your woman, da-da-da. That's your man, da-da-da. His dad's a bum-bum-bum. Her mom's a da-da-da. Status. So by being gay now, you can gain status. So you have to take that into account. These are all parts of human dynamics and interactions. So there you have it. I engaged sexually with a young man who I did love as a friend, really loved him, because it was path of least resistance. Which, when I look back, that's a terrible motivation. That's a horrible motivation. But I was deceived and driven by my own raw desire. And made a bad decision. So, do I condemn you? Who would I be to condemn you? A hypocrite. I don't condemn you. I can't judge you. I don't desire to. So when people ask me questions, I'm answering them as it pertains to the Word of God. And don't make a mistake and think that I'm trying to shy away now and backtrack and backstep. No. I 100% agree with the Word of God. Are sin and they're harmful. And oftentimes people start to have these same-sex desires because harm has already happened to them. And now they're trying to medicate that harm with physical interaction. Or maybe like me, somebody is too intimidated by men, by guys, so they find it easier to get close to women. Because they've always been close with them, they've grown up with them. And men are just too intimidating a prospect because maybe they grew up with only their mammy and they've no idea how to interact with men, so they're just going to go with women. And actually, if a man came and swept them off their feet, they'd melt in the man's arms. Because they're craving, sorry, the battery. Hopefully it doesn't create a noise when I plug it in. Apologies if it does. Because they're craving that male interaction, but they're interacting with females. Why did it go blurry? That's a bit better. Interacting with females more easily and more readily because they're not as intimidated by them, because they've been interacting with them more readily. So that can be another reason why why a young lady might interact better with other young ladies. They might have also been abused by a man when they were younger, and now they don't want to be anywhere near men. So they look for that physical stimulation or that sensual embrace from a woman. And women are softer. So it makes sense that a woman and a woman can sort of relate and understand each other a bit more. So it's probably easier for them then to go and get into a sexual relationship as well, because they're more understanding to the subtleties and intricacies of each other's nature, because men have sort of become calloused, and it's now a sort of a shameful thing for a man to be, sort of gentle or genteel in any way, like if he's a man's man, So there are all of these sort of divisions and barriers and sort of chicanes, these areas where the road sort of narrows to funnel people into this box and this clique and that clique, so that you can be compartmentalized and easily represented, or easily called upon, or easily labeled and stigmatized. No, we're all human beings with complexities in our societal interactions and approaches. And you can talk to somebody and they'll be a certain way with you, and then somebody else comes around the corner and they change. Why? Because they're accommodating their relationship with that person. Because they know, I have to relate to that person in this way because that person is that way. So I'm trying to find a language between me and that person where I can communicate to that person because of the way they are. But then when I'm talking to Susie, I talk to Susie differently because of the way Susie is. So that we learn, we find a middle ground between different people. But then when the group come together, some people go quiet. And that's when other people pipe up. So there are differences in us, intricacies in our person. There are intricacies in our personalities. And sometimes our personalities have been shaped by our circumstances to some extent. And because we've grown up in a family situation where there was the absence of a father figure, we've gravitated towards trying to get that male affection that we once had that went away, or something like that. Sometimes a father can be very affectionate and then he can remove his affection all of a sudden because of a life circumstance or a change in circumstance. And so that person feels like, what did I do wrong to deserve that abandonment? And so that person can try to go away and self-harm because they might have thought, I must deserve punishment for something I've done here. And so they'll actually go away and start harming themselves, whether it's substance abuse or... So the human heart is quite more complex than a child understands it is. So the child is sort of behaving on autopilot as a result of the environment that they've grown up in. But there are spiritual entities who understand the intricacies of human behavior and thought, who are fashioning these societal weapons against us, which God is not ignorant of. And they're heaping up harm against themselves the more and more of it they do to others. And they're callous in their calculation of these weapons. So as we become men of God, these things are unveiled before our eyes. And so we have now a way of looking at things that is more informed. But the people who might be asking us the question don't have that understanding of the complexity of the situation, or how they'll react to that situation, because they're only young people, or they're just not that way inclined in their makeup to understand the intricacies of human interaction. I certainly wasn't. I think I had more of an understanding than I was able to consciously be aware of. And I think we all do. I think on a subconscious spiritual level, we all understand these things. But with them can sometimes be largely delayed, skewed, or misinterpreted because of our environment or the lack of edification or guidance that we've had as younger people. So sometimes I just see people who've come over and asked a question, and it just feels like they're reaching out right now. There was a softness there. There was an inquiry there. So God doesn't hate you. He hates your sin. If he hated you, he never would have died on the cross for you. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe in him would not perish but have everlasting life. Yes, God loves you so that he died on the cross for you, but he hates your sin. That's why he died on the cross for you. Why? Because he won't let sin into his kingdom. So the sin had to be paid for so that you could enter his kingdom, so that the sin could be washed off of you before you enter in. Jesus didn't come to promote sin. He didn't come and pay for sin so that you could continue on in it indefinitely, continually, deliberately. Such that Hebrews 10:26 says, if we deliberately keep on sinning after we've received the knowledge of the truth, no sacrifice for sin is left, only fearful expectation of judgment and of raging fire that will consume the adversaries of God, or the enemies of God. So we're being informed a number of things there. God sees the sinner as his enemy if the sinner doesn't come away, and if the sinner deliberately remains in sin continually after they have declared that they believe in Jesus. If you say, yes, I believe in Jesus, I agree with Jesus, but I'm going to do the exact thing Jesus came to put a stop to on a continual basis because he paid for it on the cross, that would be nonsense. That'd be like saying Jesus came to promote sin. Everybody can now sin because I'm going to die on the cross, and even after I've died on the cross, you can continue on sinning. Guys, that would be preposterous. Jesus came to die on the cross for sin so that you would stop sinning, return to him. Not so that you would keep on doing it, feeling now that you have a license to do it because he's paid for it. If we deliberately keep on sinning after we've received the knowledge of the truth, that is the gospel, God hates sin, loves the sinner, but if the sinner remains in sin, will eventually hate the sinner. That's what the devil doesn't want you to know. That's the part of the gospel he doesn't want you to consider. If you remain in sin on the day of judgment, God will hate you, because his grace will come to an end. The grace period, the period where God is saying, yes, you can sin, I still love you. You still have an opportunity to return to me so long as you have breath in your body. Come back to me. Put away your sin. Return in faith. I will forgive you. But he's saying it with a sense of immediacy. You might not be here tomorrow. Return to me. Today is the day of salvation. There's an immediacy there. So when somebody comes up to me and asks me, what does the Bible say about it? And then somebody turns around and says, don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. Why? What are you trying to hide from these young people? Why are you so invested? If you think that, Ireland is a place of freedom and freedom of speech, and you won't allow these young people to ask me a question, what is it you don't want them to know? And why would you try to prevent them from hearing something that they want to know about? They've actually made a point of asking the question. You're saying don't listen to him? That's evil. That's fighting against the cross of Christ. That's the devil's work. Because now you're trying to prevent somebody who wants to know from knowing. They're at least asking the question. So it's promising that that person would turn around and say, don't listen to him. Because why would the devil say that to somebody who there was no chance of them turning away from their sin? You see, it's not only the people asking the question who are listening, it's the people around. And they know that. They don't want anybody hearing it. They don't want the truth, because the truth has power. The Word of God has power, and it moves in an area once it's spoken. So they want to deny the opportunity for the truth to be said. That's what they'd say, quickly, like that. Don't listen to him. Now, I could have been offended and said, who do you think you are telling them not to listen to me? What would that do? But I'll tell you now on video that that's character defamation. It is. That's attacking my good name. Why is my speech not trustworthy? Why is it so terrible that one should not listen to it? Everybody around would be asking that. Why is this man not to be listened to? But even the young lady said, don't worry about that. The one who was asking the question, don't worry about that. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it at all. If people want to ask me questions, I will answer them. Have I stopped preaching the gospel in Wexford at the Bullring? No. Have I stopped recording? No. Have I stopped speaking? No. Have I stopped singing? No. Have I stopped busking? No. Why would I? Why would there be any expectation that I stop doing those activities? Whether it be from somebody on the side of the street or a court judge, why would they ever try to take those freedoms away from an Irishman if they're not trying to take them away from everybody? Because my ability to answer that lady's question was her ability to hear my answer. So the man wasn't trying just to stop me speaking, he was trying to stop the lady hearing. And that's very evil, because now he's actively working against anybody having open discussion on these matters. That's extremely serious. We have to be allowed to discuss these matters in society. I'm a Christian preacher. If anybody wants to ask me questions around sexuality, if you're engaging in same-sex relationships, you can feel safe around me. You can ask me questions about the Bible, about same-sex relationships, and I will lovingly answer you. Seriously, I will lovingly answer you. I will not condemn you. I will not hate you. I will not hurt you. I will not be violent towards you. I will lovingly answer you. And I will bless you. Just like I blessed that young lady and her girlfriend. I blessed them both and I loved them both. I can tell you I only felt love in my heart for them. And I said, it doesn't mean God hates you. And I could see the lady that had an impact on her. And she said, thank you. I know God doesn't hate her, but I know God hates sin. And we've all done it, every one of us. And we need the Lord to forgive us. So, as angry as that kind of behaviour out of that man would make me, I love him too. You know, sometimes you get that urge to just, kind of cry out and say, what is wrong with you all? But what would that prove? What would it change? People will make their decisions. So we as Christians, we're filled with the truth. So obviously when there's so much evil and so many lies around us, we want to shake things up a bit and say, guys, you're in deception. You're being deceived right now. Come on, wake up. But that would be striving, and the Bible tells us not to do that. We're not to strive. We're only to answer the questions asked. When somebody asks us, why do you have so much hope that you're going to heaven? We have to answer them. We're commanded by God. Answer, always have an answer for the reason that, as to the reason for the hope that is in you. We're supposed to answer every time. Always have an answer. So when somebody asks me about sin, I will answer them honestly. And I won't be stopped by a man who says, don't listen to him. I will love that man. I will love the person that asked the question. But I will tell that man, please, don't defame my character now. There are people around here, and they might think things as a result of what you've said. They might think that I'm not trustworthy in my speech. And that could harm my reputation in this town and even my relationships with my family. And you're not entitled to do that. Not any court and not you at the side of the street. You're not allowed to do that. That's breaking the law, because you're creating in the mind of the hearer that there is some reason that my speech ought not be heard. And that is against the law. If you have no solid, irrefutable proof. And as far as I'm concerned, ever since the guards started to try and stop me speaking, they've never produced proof that I have ever said anything unlawful. Not once have I said anything unlawful. I've never incited violence, and I've never been speaking obscenities. Not once. Not on any signpost that I've held up, and not in anything I've ever spoken have I ever had obscene material or material that incites violence against anybody. So, I've never broken the law in my speech or in my song or in my banner or in any mode of expression or freedom of expression have I broken the law. Not once. Not once. I haven't broken the law. I'm no criminal. I'm a preacher of the gospel. They're still trying to hang this over my head and still trying to criminalize me, making themselves the criminals. It's the criminal who tries to criminalize the one who's not a criminal. Do you understand? It's a crime to incriminate an innocent person. And to continue to try to incriminate an innocent person, even after it's been found out that they're not a criminal. So, nobody can say, don't listen to that man. They can't do that. Now, if somebody is out on the street and they're shouting obscenities at somebody, you know, an adult might cover their child's ears and call the guards. Do you understand? Because that person is speaking an obscenity. Obscenity is crime in Ireland. If you're speaking an obscenity, like if you were talking about lewd, overt sexual stuff in such a way that a child could understand what was being said, then that might be a different situation. Because your actions then might even be defiling the mind of the child. Do you understand? But if you're talking about a subject that the child is already aware of, like if a child comes in and says, "Mommy, what's masturbation?" I mean, then it's obviously time to have a conversation. If they come in and say, "Mommy, how does a baby come out?" Then obviously it's time. The child is already aware. They're consciously aware. "Mommy, what's sex? Mommy, what's intercourse?" Or "Daddy." Well, then obviously it's time for Mommy and Daddy to discuss those things. So obviously a street preacher or a public preacher has to be aware of the audience. So if the place is full of adults, he might use different language. If he notes that it's a time of the day where children might be there or come around the corner or whatever it is, obviously different language has to be used. Language that would be above the understanding of a young child. So as a public speaker, you have to have an awareness of language that is appropriate to use given the time of day. So obviously, if I use the word paedophile, one would not expect a child under a certain age to comprehend what the word paedophile means. If they know what it means, then hearing about it isn't going to harm them. So there's this sort of barrier to entry. If an adult hears the word paedophile, then they know it's been spoken. But even children should have some knowledge of what a paedophile is. They should have some knowledge that there are potential evils in society that may come against them, and they should be prepared if a harm or an evil of that nature comes against them, that they should feel confident to approach an adult, mammy, daddy, or teacher to tell them that something inappropriate has happened. So children should have a degree of understanding that they live in a less than perfect world where not everybody just wants to give them a hug and wish them well. That there are evil men and women in the world, some of whom would actually try to harm them. And I've said these things to my own daughter. I've educated my own child that not everybody loves you. That some people want to hurt you. And as mind-altering as this can be to a child's worldview, it is necessary. Because it's not only adults that want to harm children. Children can be very vicious to one another. They can say things that are quite evil in their composition. They're designed to do harm, to hurt. And so when a child is aware they've been armed and armoured, they've been furnished with the knowledge that not everybody you're going to meet and interact with is going to mean you well, they have a sort of a guard up that isn't necessarily detrimental to their ability to trust and interact, but is also a safeguard there to say, just be cautious. Just be careful and cautious. It's no good to wrap a child up in a bubble and send them out into the world so that the first time it's popped, it's catastrophic to them. And they suffer this great trauma. You need to introduce slowly to a child that there are evil people in the world who want to harm other people. And you might meet one of them one day. So you have to be prepared. So it's absolutely remiss of a parent, it's inadequate, it's insufficient for a parent not to want to educate children when they come asking. Or even a little before, when you realise they're at that age. Now somebody might say, well, that's up to the parent and you shouldn't really be talking about that on the street. That's not true. Paedophilia is something that absolutely should be made available in terms of understanding what it is. It should be made clear to people that there are sexual offenders. And when a child becomes aware of that word, I mean, if you look at some of the games that children are playing now, like Grand Theft Auto and all of these sorts of things, like there are dildos being used as assault weapons in these games. Big giant dildos the size of a man being thrown around the place. And you think that most children now, aren't going to know what a paedophile is? When many of them have watched more pornography than their parents. It's time to get real. Yes, there are cases where there will be young children who won't know what a paedophile is, and I won't be telling them what it is. In my speech, if I ever use the word paedophile, it's succinctly. It would be in a sentence like this. How can the Catholic Church be a Christian church if they had paedophiles? I will use the word rape of children because I think it's absolutely paramount that children who understand what the word rape means would also understand that there's the potential that children be raped. If a child has come aware of what the word rape means, then I haven't educated them anything new. If they don't know what the word rape means, the most that can happen is that they might actually ask mommy and daddy what it means. Do you see the point? And if they're at the age where they can ask mommy and daddy what it means, it's already the time to tell them what it means. Or to simply say, I will tell you when I believe that is an appropriate time to tell you. So, I don't know if you're aware or not, but under the EU Convention, there is the right to the child to have their own conscience and freedom of opinion and belief. It's under the EU Convention, the rights of the child. They have a right to conscience. But you cannot say that you are holistically protecting your child if you're not going to make them aware of the potential for harm to occur to them. Children will hear worse things on morning breakfast shows. So it's absolutely of paramount importance that it's made clear publicly, that it's open to talk about paedophilia publicly. A grown man, an older man, in the Bullring in Wexford town, when I was talking about reasons why we shouldn't view the Catholic Church as a Christian church, even though I'm talking lovingly towards Catholics by so doing, I'm asking them to come out of that evil church and return to true Christianity, the true faith, and the true study of the true Bible, and leave the Catholic perversions and augmentations behind them, and giving them reasons as to why that should be the case, saying a bad tree cannot bear good fruit and a good tree cannot bear bad fruit. So if the bad tree that is the Catholic Church is producing paedophiles, is producing bad fruit, and so it can't be the Christian tree producing bad fruit. So that paedophilia and the Catholic Church are something that we should go away from. Do you understand? So the word paedophilia, obviously most children wouldn't even pronounce it. It's just me here, dude. That cool? Who's me? Who's me? Blessings. But I love it. So the point is this. Many people will try to distract and detract away from what's being spoken in public, and they will try to defame the person speaking it simply so that they can't hear the message clearly and succinctly and concisely and take it away. And we're talking real petty stuff now. I've often been talking on the street and somebody will go, blah, 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 blah. They'll just, out of nowhere, they'll just shout. You'll be preaching on the street and somebody will pass by and it'll be a group of young lads and they'll just shout at you. But at that same time, somebody else was walking by who actually turned to listen to you. And so the other one was creating a distraction. So that can be a demonic manifestation. A demon can be aware that somebody has started listening to the preaching of the gospel and become interested, and then create this distraction by manifesting in the young man who goes blah blah blah, blah something, or just any noise or any to take away. They might say something like, "You're not still there, are you?" And that's to plant the seed in the mind of the one who is listening that this person's sort of a loose cannon, not to be listened to or not trustworthy in their speech or something. So they subtly inject this doubt in the mind of the perceiver, in the mind of the listener. You see? So that's how they operate. That's how they work. That's how they try to destroy the effectiveness of the preaching. Very evil. And so society is trying to support this sort of increase in hostility towards preachers and to normalize it. So we have to come against this, and we have to say we have the right to a good name, and unless you can come forth and absolutely, irrefutably prove that this person is lying in some way, then you have to allow them the assumption and the presumption of innocence and the right to good name. Otherwise you're coming against them and you're breaking the law. Blessings in Jesus' name. Have a nice evening.